Next, we're going to talk about zones in a classroom. So what do I mean when I'm talking about a zone? A zone is just a clearly defined area in your classroom that's intended for a specific purpose, and students rotate through those zones during a school day. Sometimes people refer to them as stations or centers in a classroom. And often you're going to have zones that are multi-purpose, that serve more than one purpose. And we'll call out some of those possibilities as we go through today. But you can see on the screen, I'm going to start in the top left corner and work my way around that room. But you can see a PRT area, a computer area, which that might be something like students work independently at those stations. Maybe they're working on TeachTown, or maybe they're working on a different computer curriculum that might be in the room. Then you also see on the left-hand side, you see a teacher area. It's kind of in the middle between, you've got the door and the cubbies, kind of at the bottom of the picture. Then you've got a teacher area when you come in, and it's kind of smashed in between that entry area and the PRT area. I'd like to point out that that teacher area doesn't take up a lot of space in this classroom. As you go around, you can see that you have a social or choice area on the floor there that might not be needed in every classroom. It's just an example in this picture. On the far right top corner, you can see some work areas. Maybe that's an independent station, or maybe that's where a staff works one-on-one with a student. And there are a couple of work areas there that maybe those are multi-purpose work areas. They look like they would make great independent workstations for students. Then in the center, you have that kind of horseshoe-shaped table, which is clearly where a teacher would teach small group. And then you have a calendar and a circle area there on the carpet. That's usually more common in an elementary classroom, but we'll talk a little bit about what that might look like in a secondary classroom as we go through today as well. So that's just an example to show you how a classroom could be separated into zones or stations. Ever had a difficult classroom, a giant classroom that was difficult to divide into smaller areas, this may speak to you. You'll know that it was next to impossible to teach students who are super active sensory seekers in that kind of an environment where it's big and it's hard to break up. So this was my classroom several years ago. There's so much about this picture that I could say, but the takeaway that I want to leave you with is I didn't know what I didn't know. There were several barriers in this classroom. It really was a nightmare for me. I had several little young students with autism that year. I had been given this great big classroom that I hadn't had before, and I was trying to separate it up into smaller areas, but it was really difficult in this space. So you can see some evidence that I'm trying to do the right things. Over on the far left, there are some dividers. There's that big wooden study carrel in the middle that I was trying to use to divide up the room a little bit. But do you know what happened with that? It just became an obstacle course for students to run around and hide underneath. There was like a desk on one side and they would like get in there and hide. What I did like about it though, was that I could put my visual schedules on it, and they were in a central area of the room. So you can see that I've got visual schedules in place. I'm trying to run that in this classroom. I've got different small group areas going where staff can teach students in small groups. And so I was working really hard, but the reality was that I was chasing 7 little guys around this classroom every day. And they were much quicker than I was at skirting between those tables. And so you can see that how this furniture might have just become an obstacle course for those students. And they were, like I said, they were quicker at getting around it than I was. You can also see back in the far right corner, there's a shelf that I could have used as a divider. If I would have used that a little better, it might have been helpful for me. I didn't use it correctly in this picture. It's kind of just set back there instead of out in the middle somewhere where it could maybe divide up a section of the room. There are some, you can see those little plastic drawers next to a couple of the stations. I was trying to organize my materials and have things ready for myself and my para to use, but I was failing every single day. And it was because of 2 reasons. I didn't know what I didn't know, and the room wasn't set up in a way to help me. So I needed support and someone to show me what I didn't know. And thankfully, I had an amazing mentor in my district who was able to come in and support me and help me get my classroom where it needed to be. So I ended up moving out of this classroom. The district needed it for a kindergarten classroom anyway. They moved me upstairs to a much smaller room that worked much better for my needs. And I'm going to show you the smaller room in just a second. So think about this room, all the things that are going on, everything I was trying to do but it clearly was not working, was not an environment where teaching and learning were successfully occurring. And I desperately wanted that to happen, but I wasn't sure how. So keep that in mind. And here is an example of my new classroom. So this was not all me, and it did not all happen overnight. I had a lot of help and support to get here. But you can see that now there's furniture being used to divide up the classroom, successfully divide up the classroom. There are some areas of the room that you can see. You can identify the whole group area, some small group areas. And there's a one-on-one area back in that top right corner where one of the paras is working in discrete trial with a student. There's an independent workstation with the little guy in blue at the back. I've got a small group going at the horseshoe table, another student doing independent work at the green station over on the right side. And then there towards the front of the room near the camera, there's another one-on-one teaching area. So what I would like you to get from this is that you must have defined spaces. It's really difficult to teach in a big open space. You can use rugs, tables, bookshelves, dividers, other furniture. You can see these outdoor storage benches that I found and purchased for my classroom. So whatever you have, whatever's available to you, whatever you can reasonably get, you can use to define the areas of your classroom. By this time, I've learned a few things from the previous room. Things were going much more smoothly. I was not chasing students around this room, and teaching and learning were happening.